Skip it up and that up. So there's an interesting rumor going around that was started by GamesIndustry.biz. I'll have a link below in the description, where developers are now saying the Wii U is less powerful than the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. They're saying that the GPU doesn't have as many shaders, that a PlayStation 3 with a PlayStation Vita would actually be more capable than the tablet controller on the Wii U. And to sum up the article, it just says the Wii U cannot keep up with current generation consoles. Not next gen, not PS4 and Xbox 720, current generation. And that's pretty devastating. But if you know anything about specs and technology, you realize this article is a big pile of crap. And in this video, I'm going to get ridiculously technical and explain why. So sit back, put your nerd hats on, and let's get down to business. So it's been confirmed that the GPU in the Wii U is going to be based on the AMD Radeon R700 series. And it's been all but confirmed that the chip inside of it is going to be based on a Radeon HD 4850. And according to this article that says the Wii U is not as powerful as current generation consoles, they say that the GPU inside the Wii U is not going to have as many shaders as the PS3 and Xbox 360. So I decided to put a little chart together to show you, here you're seeing it right now in the video, that has a video card that's equivalent to the RSX processor, the graphics processor inside the PlayStation 3, and I actually, just because we're not sure about the 4850 side of things for the GPU inside the Wii U, I chose to pit the NVIDIA GeForce 7800, which is equivalent to the RSX chip, like I just said, in the PS3, against a more cut down version of what might be in the Wii U in terms of GPU. And actually, the 7800 you're seeing here may be slightly more powerful than the chipset or the graphics chip inside of the PS3, so I'm maybe giving it a little too much credit. But I somewhat did that on purpose, just because I want to prove my point. So let's take a look at this chart here. Let's compare the NVIDIA GeForce 7800 GTX PCI Edition against the ATI Radeon 4770. And like I said, there is probably going to be a 4850 GPU inside the Wii U. So let's look at specs. Now there's a couple corrections I'm going to have to make with this NVIDIA GeForce 7800. The core clock inside the PlayStation 3's GPU is faster. It's at 550 megahertz, and the memory clock is at 700 megahertz inside the GPU of the PlayStation 3. So it's a little bit slower here. But still, even so, if you look at the core clock of the ATI Radeon 4770, and this is a lower power GPU than that's supposedly supposed to be in the Wii U, it's at 750 megahertz, okay? The memory clock, once again, in the PlayStation 3 is 700 megahertz. In the ATI Radeon HD 4770, which is a slightly cut down version of what's probably going to be in the Wii U, is at 1600 megahertz. Memory bandwidth for the 7800 is 38.4 gigabytes a second. The memory bandwidth inside the ATI Radeon HD 4770 is 51.2 gigabytes a second. The pixel fill rate is at 6880 for the 7800. In the 4770, it's at 12,000 megapixels a second. The texture fill rate for the 7800 is 10,320 megapixels a second. In the ATI Radeon HD, once again, it outperforms the 7800 with a texture fill rate of 24,000 megapixels a second. On top of all that, the RSX, the PS3's GPU, uses a dated architecture where it has dedicated pipelines instead of using a unified shader architecture. The Xbox 360's GPU, the Xenos, has a unified shader architecture. It was one of the first graphics processors to have that, and that's why a lot of third-party titles look slightly better on the Xbox 360 than they do on the PS3. On top of that, obviously, the GPU inside of the Wii U is going to have this unified shader architecture, so that already gives it a huge advantage over the PlayStation 3. The graphics chip alone is going to wipe the floor with the PlayStation 3's graphics chip. Now let's compare a graphics card which is equivalent to the Xenos GPU in the Xbox 360. At the time of the Xbox 360's release, ATI stated that the Xenos GPU inside of the console is equivalent to an ATI Radeon X1800/X1850, so the video card I have up on the screen is pretty much on the money. The only difference is that the core clock on the Xenos GPU is slower, coming in at 500 megahertz, and the Xbox 360's 512 megabytes of GDDR3 is also slower, coming in at 700 megahertz. The core clock and the memory on the ATI Radeon X1800 XT that's pictured here are faster, with the core clock coming in at 625 megahertz and the memory being clocked at 750 megahertz. So once again, let's compare the Radeon X1800 with the ATI Radeon HD 4770. I will repeat again, more than likely this chip is watered down compared to what will actually be in the Wii U. So the core clock of the Xenos CPU, like I just said, is 500 MHz. Now the core clock of this ATI Radeon HD 4770, which is slightly more anemic than the chip that actually will be in the Wii U, is clocked at 750 MHz. That alone makes the 4770 50% faster than the ATI Radeon X1800 XT. And on top of that, the 4770 is DirectX 10.1 compliant. The Xenos CPU in the Xbox 360 and the ATI Radeon X1800 pictured here are only DirectX 9.0C compliant. So that alone makes the R700 series GPU that will be in the upcoming Wii U much more powerful than the current generation. Let's continue. Now the Xbox 360 has 512 megabytes of shared GDDR3 memory. Both the main processor and the graphics processor pull from one pool of memory. That GDDR3 memory, like I said before, is clocked at 700 MHz. The ATI Radeon HD 4770 that I have pictured here that represents the Wii U is clocked at 1600 MHz. So not only is the memory in the ATI HD 4770 over double the speed of the memory in the Xenos GPU in the 360, the 4770 also has GDDR5 memory as opposed to GDDR3. GDDR5 is the memory that all current generation video cards and computers use, and to make a long story short, GDDR5 is much faster than GDDR3, and the Wii U's graphics processor is going to use GDDR5, giving it another advantage over the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. The pixel fill rate of the ATI Radeon X1800 is 10,000 megapixels per second, and the pixel fill rate of the ATI Radeon HD 4770, the chip that's equivalent to what will be in the Wii U, is 12,000 megapixels a second. The texture fill rate for the ATI Radeon X1800, once again this is equivalent to the Xenos GPU in the Xbox 360, is 10,000 megatexels a second. The ATI Radeon HD 4770, I know I sound like a broken record, this is the GPU that's equivalent to what will be in the Wii U, has a texture fill rate of 24,000 megatexels a second. That's over double the performance. Again, just like when we compared the RSX GPU in the PlayStation 3 to the potential GPU in the Wii U. And keep in mind, the ATI Radeon HD 4770 is probably watered down compared to what will be in the Wii U. The HD 4770 absolutely dominates the Xenos GPU inside the Xbox 360. Now let's move on and compare the main processors in the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 to the CPU or main processor that will be in the Wii U. Okay, so now it's a battle of the processors. The Power 7 processor is the IBM developed processor that will be in the Wii U, and on the right you have the Xenon processor for the Xbox 360, which was also developed by IBM. And as you see on the screen right now, I have a chart comparing their specifications. Now let's take a look at the Power 7 processor that will be in the Wii U first. It has been confirmed it will be a Power 7 processor, but the specifications of the Wii U's Power 7 processor haven't been released. So what I did was looked at the range of what the Power 7 specifications could be and took all the specifications from the lowest end of the Power 7 spectrum. The Power 7 processor in the Wii U will more than likely be a quad-core processor. It will have a clock speed between 2.4 and 4.25 gigahertz. It will have 64 kilobytes of L1 cache per core, 32 kilobytes for instruction and 32 kilobytes for data. It will have 256 kilobytes of L2 cache per core, and it will have 4 megabytes of L3 cache per core. It could actually have 8 megabytes of L3 cache per core, but I doubt they're going to put that much in the Wii U's Power 7 processor. Now here is where the Power 7 processor that will be in the Wii U becomes a beast. Each core can handle 4 threads of code at once. That means the Wii U processor will be able to handle 16 threads of code simultaneously. That is insane. Hell, if you have a quad-core Intel Core i7 processor, it can only handle 8 threads of code at once. So Nintendo isn't screwing around when it comes to their CPU in the Wii U. Now let's take a look at the Xenon CPU in the Xbox 360. This is a triple-core processor which has a clock rate of 3.2 gigahertz. It has 64 kilobytes of L1 cache per core, 32 kilobytes for data and 32 kilobytes for instruction, and it has a measly 1 megabyte of L2 cache, and that's not per core, that's for the whole processor. On top of that, the 3 cores in the CPU of the Xbox 360 can only handle 6 threads of code at once. That equates to 2 threads of code per core. So let's compare, shall we? The Power 7 CPU in the Wii U is going to have at least 16 megabytes of L3 cache. cache. The Xenon CPU in the Xbox 360 doesn't even have L3 cache in it. The Power 7 CPU, like I said before, is going to be able to handle 16 threads of code at once. The Xenon CPU in the Xbox 360 can only handle 6 threads of code at once. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize which processor is more powerful. Now let's compare the Power 7 CPU to the Cell processor in the PlayStation 3. Now the Cell is a very different animal than a conventional processor. It has one main PowerPC processor core, and then it has SPs, which are synergistic processing elements. And what the main PowerPC core does is it divvies up tasks for the SPEs to do. It'll send physics to one SPE, it'll send sound effects to another SPE, and it'll send artificial intelligence to another SPE, so on and so forth. There's two things to remember about the Cell processor in the PlayStation 3. One is that the SPEs are not standalone cores like the Xenon processor in the Xbox 360 or your multi-core processor in your home computer. On top of that, only 6 SPEs are available to game developers. One SPE is disabled to improve manufacturing yields, and another SPE is used for the PlayStation 3 operating system. But enough on the nitty-gritty of the Cell processor, let's compare it to the Power 7 processor that's going to be in the Wii U. The Cell is clocked at 3.2 GHz, and it only has a measly 512 kilobytes of L2 cache. A lot of developers have complained about that. Now again, the Power 7 processor that's going to be in the Wii U can be clocked anywhere from 2.4 to 4.25 GHz. It's going to have the 64 kilobytes once again of L1 cache, 32 kilobytes for instruction and 32 kilobytes for data. It's going to have 256 kilobytes of L2 cache per core, and again, this is big. It's going to have 4 megabytes of L3 cache per core. The more code you could store right on the processor, the more efficient the processor can be. That's why cache is so important. Then on top of that, compared to the convoluted setup of the Cell processor, the Power 7 processor is going to have 4 fully functioning independent cores, and each core can handle 4 threads of code. That adds up to 16 simultaneous threads of code that could run at a time on the Power 7 processor. In contrast, the Cell processor can only handle 6 simultaneous tasks. And due to the fact that the SPEs are not individual cores and rely on the PowerPC element in the Cell, it becomes a huge challenge to program for. And the only developers that utilize what the Cell is truly capable of is first-party developers like Naughty Dog and Guerrilla Games. So once again, even if the Wii U only uses the entry-level quad-core Power 7 processor, its capabilities destroy the Cell processor, hands down. Now let's wrap this video up and I will give you my final thoughts. The reason why I made such a detailed video like this is to make a point. 1, don't believe every rumor that you hear. And 2, it would be a moronic business move and almost impossible for Nintendo to make the Wii U less powerful than the current generation consoles. I mean, hell, if Nintendo went to Nvidia and asked them to use the 8800 GT, which is now a 5-year-old GPU, it would still blow away the graphics processors that are in the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, and it's 5 years old and costs next to nothing now. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this very detailed video on the hardware specs of the Wii U and why it is going to be more powerful than the Xbox 360 and PS3. Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below, rate and subscribe, and as always, thank you for supporting Review Tech USA. News stories will resume tomorrow. And dear Lord, I'm gonna need a beer after making this video.